Hi and welcome to A Window to the North. My name is Sarah and I am an expat coach, which means that I help people moving to Sweden with their move, but also with feeling at home here, integrating in Sweden once they have arrived, and basically just finding their way around here. I run the blog A Window to the North if you would like to learn more about life in Sweden, and am also on Instagram under the same name, A Window to the North. And today I wanted to talk to you about 7 ideas of how to move abroad if that is something that you would like to do. Generally, I am an expat in Sweden myself. I am originally German and have lived abroad for basically by now the majority of my life. So I've lived in total in 7 countries and on 3 continents. And for me, I guess the amount of moves that I have had behind me by now shows I really do enjoy living abroad and, experiencing new countries and new cultures. So many of the tips that I'm giving you today are actually ways that I myself have moved abroad and have enjoyed living abroad for 6 months up to several years. Tip number 1 is to move abroad as a student. This could either be taking part in an entire student program, so a bachelor, master's degree, or maybe even as a researcher or PhD. But it could also mean just going on a student exchange for 6 months up to a year. I myself moved to the US as an exchange student. I went to Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff for a year, and I found that moving abroad as a student is a fantastic way to get to know the country, the culture, but also have a great support system around you. You have a lot of other international students, but you also have a lot of locals, other students that are willing to show you around, help you out, that have time. You really get to enjoy and experience life in that culture, in that country at that point in time. And another benefit of being a student in many countries that you can move to as a student, you are allowed to work a couple of hours to support yourself, so you can also gain some work experience in that country. I personally worked in a hotel, in the university hotel at that time, and you can support yourself a little as a student. The second way of moving abroad also is something that is probably mostly adequate for students or right out of university, and that is to find an internship abroad. Now, there's several ways. An internship basically is the possibility to gain work experience in your chosen field, and you could do so abroad. So you could either just approach different companies that are in your profession, and you could do so, for example, via LinkedIn. So just research companies in your chosen country and that fit your professional profile and apply for internships. Or you could join and go through one of the many networks that offer internship opportunities abroad. So the good thing about internships is that, number 1, you will oftentimes get paid, so you have means to support yourself. You gain work experience not only in your field but also internationally. I mean, these days international work experience becomes more and more important. And thirdly, oftentimes if you do a really good job, you could have the chance of postponing your internship or turning your internship into a full-blown work contract and thereby extending your stay in your chosen country. For me, that feels like a really safe way to test the waters. If I always felt like, okay, if I don't like either the internship, the job, or the country, then 6 months, for example, an internship of 6 months is something that is doable because it'll be over rather quickly, and then I can just go home. Or if I truly enjoy it, then after 6 months I've lived in that country long enough and worked in that job long enough and in that company that I can educate a decision if I would like to stay longer. Personally, I have in total completed 3 internships. My original background is in hotel management, so I studied hotel management, which is why 2 of my internships actually have been in hotels, one in London and one in Brussels. This is generally a tip. Hotels are a really good way to find employment abroad because hotels are very used to employing foreign people that might not be able to speak the language. But one should keep in mind that working in a hotel also is, it's hard work. It's not the most glorious job that you can find. So that is something that you need to be aware of. My 3rd internship actually was in Helsinki in Finland, where I wanted to move at that point because I had met somebody that lived there and I wanted to explore the relationship. So what I did there actually was that I just Googled German internship Helsinki, or German-speaking internship Helsinki, and thereby ended up finding an internship at an event management company. So, sometimes actually your language skills are almost the only skills that you need. People oftentimes try to find native speakers for intern jobs or for entry-level jobs so that they can cater to that part of the market. And in my case, actually, that internship was for 6 months, and after 3 months, the company knew that we were a good fit, and I ended up being offered a permanent contract for a total of 5 years, or rather, it was an impermanent contract, but I ended up staying with that company for 5 years. So, internships are great door openers if you want to get your foot in an industry or, want to explore a country. The third way of moving abroad that I would like to propose to you, that I personally have no experience with, but that was really popular when I was straight out of high school, when it came to moving to particularly the US or Canada, is working as an au pair. An au pair is kind of like a house help / nanny that lives with a family for a certain time, oftentimes for up to a year. So you will choose a host family and you will help them with light household chores and minding their children for a set hour per week. Oftentimes, I think that should be, around 25 hours. At least that's what it is in Sweden. And you will be paid for your work. So I guess you won't get rich, but you will have enough, to move around, particularly since you are living with that family. Now, a bonus of being an au pair is that it is a great way to learn the language, because you will have to communicate with the family's children, at least in their chosen language, unless you are being employed to teach them a different language. And for many people, the threshold of speaking a language might be a lot smaller if you speak to kids than if you speak to equals, to peers of your own age, and you're insecure, you feel like you might sound a little dumb, even though nobody should be afraid to use a new language, but I guess that's a topic for a different video. So anyways, oftentimes it's easier to learn a new language when speaking to kids, and kids oftentimes are also very helpful in trying to help you out with their language and correcting you and teaching you new words. And another benefit of working as an au pair actually is that because you are living with that family, you really experience that family's and that country's culture. You're really in there. You have contact to local people directly. You will get to know the country. You will get to know the customs so much more than if you were living on your own. Now, the fourth way of moving abroad is to find employment. This, of course, has several benefits. You will be paid, so you don't, of course, it always is beneficial to have a certain baseline of savings if you move abroad just for emergencies, but it is a smaller financial investment because you will be reimbursed for your time. It is a great step and advancement in your career, and you will have access to the social security system of that country. How to find employment? Monster.com in the international version, or in the Swedish version, this would be monster.se, is a great platform to find jobs. Another fantastic way to find jobs and research companies that you're interested in nowadays is, of course, LinkedIn. So you could look for jobs in your profession. You can filter, for example, after location, after country, after city, after profession, after entry level or advanced or managerial level, and you can then through that platform apply to these jobs and companies directly. Alternatively, you can specialize with a headhunting company that help foreign employers find talents and make a match. Now, the good thing with moving abroad for work is that your employer usually is very helpful in, organizing your visa. They are your sponsor, and it is, of course, in their interest to help you to move abroad as smoothly as possible. Oftentimes, there are relocation packages that are offered, and, to kind of keep you happy in the company as well. And in terms of helping you find your way around, helping you integrate, many, particularly for example in Sweden, many startup companies offer language courses and other activities for their foreign employees, because after they have made that investment of getting you to come to their chosen country. Of course, it is in their interest to protect that investment and make you happy so that you would stay as long as possible. So before we move to the last 3 points of how to move abroad, let me know in the comments below if you are somebody that would like to move abroad. Have you maybe already lived abroad, and what is your dream destination? Where would you like to move? Number 4, you could move abroad by either running your own business in that country. So for example, in Sweden, that means you can come to Sweden to open your own business. Of course, then that business would have to be beneficial to Sweden. So you need to have a reason to be in Sweden for that business. For example, if you would open a carpentry business in Sweden, then of course it makes sense that you would have to move to Sweden. In this case, of course, you would have to have a certain amount of money in the bank so you can show that you are able to support yourself while your business takes off, before your business becomes profitable. Or you could move abroad being a digital nomad. I mean, digital nomading is something that has become a trend more and more over the past years. So you have a job that you execute online, and basically the only thing that you need to work in your job, self-employed oftentimes, is an internet connection and some kind of device, most likely a laptop or an iPad, and then you could work from anywhere. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if that is your chosen route and you wish to stay longer than a few months in a country, is that if you stay for an extended amount of time, for example, in Sweden, if you stay for more than 6 months, you need to register with the tax agency. So here it would make sense to, depending on where you want to go, compare tax rates, and if your chosen country has a tax treaty with your original country, so you don't end up being double taxed. And depending on the tax rate, Sweden, for example, has a rather high tax rate that you can still afford living here and afford charging what you're charging. Number six is to be financially independent. What does that mean? Financially independent means that you are able to financially support yourself and will not be a burden to the country that you move to. So that would mean that you either have a certain amount of savings in your bank account that would enable you to live in a country for a year or two without working. It could mean that you have a certain income from your home country, for example, a pension, or it could mean that somebody who has a lot of saving is willing to sponsor you and take responsibility for you in that country. Last but not least, number 7, which is kind of a bit of a bonus way of moving to a different country, and that is being in a relationship with a citizen of that country. So for example, right now I live in Sweden. The reason why it was very easy for me to move to Sweden, number 1, is because as a German I am a member of the EU. Germany is a member of the EU, and so is Sweden, and between countries in the EU there's free movement, free right of movement. So if you have an EU passport, you can basically live in almost any EU country that you choose and work under the same conditions as a citizen of that country. But also, and that made it very quick for me, I am married to a Swede, which made the whole process of moving to Sweden for us very simple. To keep in mind that if you are in a relationship with somebody and you would like to move to their home country, there are 2 things that you should consider. Number 1 is that oftentimes you need to prove that you have been in a relationship for a certain amount of time, be that there could be interviews involved. I know of a friend who moved to Australia with her then fiance, and they went through interviews of how they met, how they spent certain time together, and just to prove that you really have been knowing each other for a while. But also you need to prove, for example, if you have been living together, be that through both names on the lease, be that through electricity bills in both your names, stuff like that. So you need to prove that you've been living together, or that find other ways to prove that you actually have been in a real relationship for a certain amount of time. And number 2, and that is maybe even the more important one, is that if you move to a certain country, if you get a residence permit or a visa in a certain country because of relationship ties to a citizen of that country, then your visa is tied to that relationship, meaning that If that relationship for some reason would no longer exist, you break up, for example, then your right of staying in that country most likely would be revoked unless you can by that time produce another reason for staying in that country. But yes, all in all, these were my 7 tips of how to move abroad. If you like this, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel down below. And I hope I'll see you next week. Bye!